22 miles off the coast of Los Angeles, there's an island where wild American bison outnumber the parking spots. Underneath the skyscrapers of downtown LA, 11 miles of forgotten tunnels still exist from the days of bootleg whiskey. And scattered across the desert your GPS insists is empty, there's a missile site, a drowned neighborhood, and the ruins of a socialist utopia that almost nobody driving past has ever stopped to see. So let me ask you something. How well do you actually know Southern California? 22 miles off the coast of Los Angeles, there's an island where wild American bison outnumber the parking spots. Underneath the skyscrapers of downtown LA, 11 miles of forgotten tunnels still exist from the days of bootleg whiskey. And scattered across the desert your GPS insists is empty, there's a missile site, a drowned neighborhood, and the ruins of a socialist utopia that almost nobody driving past has ever stopped to see. So let me ask you something. How well do you actually know Southern California?
In the 1920s, a developer named George Peck had a plan. Build a row of elegant homes along a bluff called Paseo del Mar in San Pedro, each one with a sweeping ocean view toward Catalina Island. It worked. The homes sold. A streetcar line ran right past them. For a few years, this was some of the most desirable real estate in Los Angeles. Then, on January 2, 1929, a crack opened in the ground. Underneath the bluff sat a layer of bentonite clay, slippery, absorbent, and quietly undercut by waves for years. When a water main broke, then a gas line, the ground had nowhere left to go. It started sliding toward the ocean. By the middle of that year, the neighborhood had dropped 7.5 feet. A July earthquake made it worse. At its fastest, the land moved 11 inches in a single day. Streets cracked. Streetcar tracks buckled. About a dozen buildings across 5 acres were damaged before the city evacuated the area completely, and roughly 40,000 square feet of land eventually slid into the sea. Almost a century later, the slide still hasn't fully stopped. Some sections have dropped more than 50 feet since 1929. Locals call it Sunken City, a fenced-off, technically illegal, endlessly photographed stretch of broken sidewalks and tilted foundations, sitting right at the edge of one of LA's most expensive coastlines. It's not a metaphor. It's a neighborhood Los Angeles quite literally lost to the ocean. While Sunken City was falling into the ocean, something very different was happening underneath downtown LA. Literally underneath it. Starting in 1901, workers began digging service tunnels beneath the Bunker Hill and Hill Street area to ease brutal street congestion. The Pacific Electric Railway added its own tunnel network for its famous red cars. By the 1920s, Los Angeles had roughly 11 miles of tunnels running beneath its streets, and most of them had already fallen out of everyday use. Then came Prohibition. From 1920 to 1933, alcohol was illegal across the entire country. Los Angeles didn't stop drinking, it just moved underground, literally. Historians estimate around 400 speakeasies operated across the city during those 13 years, and many connected through the same forgotten tunnel network. Take the King Eddie Saloon, still standing at 5th and Main. Above ground, it looked like a piano shop. Below ground, it was a full speakeasy, and it never actually closed. It's still open today, more than a century later. The Millennium Biltmore Hotel's Gold Room ran a similar trick, with a mirrored panel that swung open as a secret doorway for smuggling liquor in and smuggling high-profile guests out during police raids. The tunnels reportedly carried more than bootleg gin over the decades. Cash moved between banks, prisoners transferred out of public view, even, according to some accounts, mobster Mickey Cohen during his trial. Most of the network was never properly mapped in the first place, which means no one today has a complete picture of what's actually still down there. Most entrances are sealed. A few still lead into the dark, into a maze of brick, old pipe, and 100 years of graffiti, sitting quietly beneath the feet of everyone walking to work. By the 1950s, Los Angeles had a new problem, and it wasn't traffic. It was the Soviet Union. LA was one of the country's most important aerospace manufacturing hubs, which made it a top nuclear target. So the U.S. Army quietly built a ring of anti-aircraft missile sites around the entire city, 16 of them, stretching from Malibu down through the San Fernando Valley. They were called Nike Ajax sites, named for the Greek goddess of victory, designed to shoot down Soviet bombers before they could deliver a nuclear payload. One of the best-preserved sites, LA 96, sits atop San Vicente Peak in the Santa Monica Mountains, nearly 2,000 feet up, just off Mulholland Drive. From 1956 to 1968, this hexagonal steel tower scanned the skies for incoming aircraft. If it found one, launch commands went to a separate site down in the Sepulveda Basin, where the actual missiles were kept. Then, almost as fast as they were built, they became obsolete. Intercontinental ballistic missiles made bomber attacks unnecessary. You no longer needed a plane to deliver a warhead. By 1974, every Nike site in the country was decommissioned. Most were bulldozed, sold off, or left to rot.
La 96 survived.
Today it's a public park, and you can hike up and stand on the same radar platform that once watched the horizon for an attack that never came. With a 360-degree view of the exact city it was built to protect, all the way from the ocean to the downtown skyline 20 miles away.
2 hours southeast of LA, there's a sea that was never supposed to exist. In 1905, an irrigation company was digging a canal to bring Colorado River water into the desert. The plan failed, the river broke through, and for the better part of 2 years it poured uncontrolled into a low desert basin more than 200 feet below sea level. By the time engineers finally sealed the breach, they had accidentally created California's largest lake, the Salton Sea. For a while, it was a paradise. In the 1950s and 60s, the Salton Riviera had marinas, yacht clubs, and speedboat world records set right on its surface. The high salinity and low elevation actually made boats faster there. Celebrities were regulars, and at its peak, the sea reportedly drew more annual visitors than Yosemite. Then it started turning on itself. With no natural outlet, it just kept getting saltier. Today it's over 50% saltier than the ocean. Agricultural runoff added pesticides and fertilizer. Tropical storms in 1976 and 1977 flooded and destroyed marinas. Fish died off in massive numbers, and pollution concerns finished off tourism for good. What's left today are places like Bombay Beach and Salton City, half-abandoned resort towns with empty streets and homes no one's lived in for decades. And yet, somehow, the sea remains one of the most important stops on the entire Pacific Flyway, with over 400 bird species relying on an accidental, shrinking, man-made lake as one of the last major desert wetlands in the region.
Drive along Highway 138 through the Antelope Valley, on the edge of the Mojave Desert, and you'll pass a pile of crumbling stone most people mistake for old ranch ruins. It's actually the remains of one of the most ambitious experiments in American history. In 1914, a lawyer named Job Harriman, who just narrowly lost his second run for mayor of Los Angeles as a socialist candidate, decided to build the alternative himself. He bought land in the desert and founded Llano del Rio, a self-sufficient cooperative colony meant to prove socialism could actually work. It started with 5 families. By 1917, at its peak, it had grown to somewhere between 900 and 1,100 residents, with its own newspaper, a bakery, a cannery, a sawmill, a rock quarry, dances, sports leagues, and even a Montessori school. Designed in part by a feminist architect who envisioned shared kitchens and childcare systems decades ahead of her time. But Llano had a serious flaw built into its foundation. It admitted white residents only by written policy. And beyond that, it was hit by lawsuits, wartime draft disputes, and, this being the desert, a losing battle over water rights. By 1918, the colony had gone bankrupt. Most remaining members relocated to Louisiana to try again as New Llano, which also eventually failed. What was left behind in California was stripped for materials almost immediately. Today, the ruins are a registered California historical landmark, but there's no gate, no museum, no ticket booth. Just stone walls slowly returning to the desert, sitting in plain sight of thousands of cars that pass by every day without ever knowing what they're looking at. 22 miles off the coast, Catalina Island has a resident population with absolutely nothing to do with California's native wildlife. Wild American bison. In December 1924, a film crew shipped somewhere between 14 and 18 bison out to the island for a silent western. Historical accounts actually disagree on which film, and it's possible the bison barely made the final cut at all. What everyone agrees on is what happened next. Shipping the animals back to the mainland was expensive and complicated, so the production simply left them behind. Catalina's owner at the time, chewing gum magnate William Wrigley Jr., let them stay, and later added more from Yellowstone in the 1930s. With no natural predators and a mild island climate, the herd thrived far more than anyone expected. By the 1970s and 80s, the population had ballooned to somewhere around 500 to 600 animals, seriously overgrazing the island's native plants. Today, the Catalina Island Conservancy manages the herd down to a more sustainable 100 to 150 animals. And in a genuinely full-circle moment, some of Catalina's bison have actually been sent back to Lakota Sioux reservations in the Dakotas as part of tribal bison restoration programs, 100 years after their ancestors first showed up on a movie set and simply never left. Last one. And it's hiding in plain sight for 6 million people every single day. If you've ever driven the 5 or the 101 through LA, you've probably seen it without realizing what it used to be. A long, flat concrete channel, usually carrying nothing more than a shallow trickle of water. That's the Los Angeles River, and it wasn't always like this. Before the 20th century, it was a genuinely wild, unpredictable waterway. For most of the year, it was barely a stream. But during storms, it could turn into a powerful, braided torrent with no fixed course at all, carving brand new paths across a floodplain up to 7 miles wide with every major storm. That unpredictability caused repeated disasters, floods in 1815, 1861, and 1914, but nothing compared to March 2, 1938. Back-to-back storms dumped as much as 32 inches of rain in the mountains in just a few days. The flood killed at least 113 people, destroyed over 5,600 buildings, and caused roughly $78 million in damage, well over $1 billion today. Los Angeles decided enough was enough. Over the next 20 years, the Army Corps of Engineers poured 3.5 million barrels of cement and lined 278 miles of the river and its tributaries in concrete, turning a wild, living river into a 51-mile flood control channel with one job: get the water to the ocean as fast as possible. It worked. LA hasn't seen a flood on that scale since. But it also meant an entire generation of Angelenos grew up thinking their river was just a drainage ditch. Today there's a real, funded push to bring parts of it back to life. But for now, most people driving past it every day have no idea they're looking at one of the most dramatic engineering transformations in American history. A neighborhood that slid into the ocean. 11 miles of Prohibition tunnels still running under downtown. A ring of missile sites built for a war that never came. An accidental sea that briefly outdrew Yosemite. A socialist utopia turned to dust in the Mojave. A herd of bison that missed their ride home from a movie set. And a wild river turned into 51 miles of concrete. None of this is hidden because it's secret. It's hidden because it's easy to drive past. Easy to assume you know a place just because you've seen it in 100 postcards. So next time someone tells you they know Southern California, ask them if they've ever stood at the edge of Sunken City, hiked up to a Cold War radar tower, or driven past a socialist ghost town without even slowing down. Because the Real Southern California was never just palm trees and freeways. It was always this. You just had to know where to look.